Okay, the next talk will be by Yaron about BPM, which I was very much looking forward to because it undermines one of the USPs for MediaWiki, and that is its rapid prototyping capabilities. Imagine BPM systems are, they're at any scale, at any cost, but if you want to implement one that just serves the purpose immediately, either you have to code it yourself in some... Or you just, use Semantic MediaWiki or Cargo to actually come up with a first version, let it play with your employees, and then,
Thanks.
Evaluate. Okay, please, Yaron.
This is me. My name is Yaron Koren. I do all these different things. I live in New Jersey. Semantic MediaWiki and Cargo, I'll talk about Cargo tomorrow, but if you haven't heard of it. They both support a lot of visualizations and use cases. There's one use case, well, there's a number of use cases that aren't supported, but the one I wanted to be talking about is business process management, or BPM. If you don't know about it, Wikipedia definition is the use of various methods to discover, model, analyze, measure, improve, optimize, and automate business processes. I was totally new to this whole world before I started looking into it about a month or two ago. So if you haven't heard of it either, then you're in the same position I was. It is widely used, and if you're a consultant like me, the incentive to get involved in it is there's potentially a lot of money involved, and I apologize, it's not dollars, it's euros. So I mean, I haven't really explained what business process management is, other than that stock Wikipedia definition. But hopefully these examples will give a sense, as much of a sense as I have anyway, of what BPM is. I'm somewhat on shaky ground here, so feel free to correct me if I'm missing something obvious or whatever. But I'm listing here four standard BPM visualizations. The big one, I think, is flowcharts, and then I don't know how to pronounce those, Raki matrices or matrices. I don't know. Racy, literally. Okay. So those first two are for repeated processes, things that just sort of last indefinitely, and then the other two I think are for project-specific ones where you're tracking the development of a single specific project over time. That's Gantt charts and Kanban boards. And Gantt charts actually came up in somebody's talk. Was it yours, Cindy? Did you have a Gantt chart or something? Yeah. It was a what? Oh, a PERT chart, yeah, okay, which is similar. You're right, okay. So I just have some sample images to try to explain what each of these are. A flowchart is going to involve boxes and arrows pointing to one another to represent an entire workflow. A RACI matrix, it has a listing of everyone's different responsibilities, although that's just the R of RACI, but basically everyone's different involvement in different aspects of projects. A Gantt chart shows the progress of a project over time. And then a Kanban board is, there's stuff like Trello and Fabricator, for that matter, which I think fit the definition of a Kanban board. Or Kanban, I'm not sure. It's Japanese in origin. I think it came from Toyota, which actually was a big pioneer in a lot of this kind of project management stuff. So yeah, it's basically you put the different tasks within different columns or buckets or what have you, and then they can move over time as they get accomplished. So. And here, this is just stuff I know about BPM tools for visualizing and creating this stuff on the web, at least. I think most of these are JavaScript based, except for GraphViz. There's BPMN IO, Mermaid, which already came up in the previous talk, which is popular, and then a few others. GraphViz is server side, and the others are client side. I don't know of standard tools for racy matrices or Kanban boards. I didn't look too hard, but yeah. I mean, well, obviously there's applications that have them, but in terms of open source JavaScript tools or something to let you integrate into your system, which is the relevant thing here. Yeah. Okay. So the question is how best to support this stuff in MediaWiki. The idea is, if you want to have like a Kanban board or whatever in your wiki, what's the best way to do it? So there's really two big questions, I think. Should the data be stored across a lot of wiki pages? So for instance, with a flowchart, should each box and arrow have its own wiki page, or each box or whatever? Or should it just be in one big page or file, however you look at it? And then the other one is, if it is stored in one page or file, should it also be queryable? I mean, if you're storing each thing as its own page, then it's pretty easy to query it probably, because you can just store it in Semantic MediaWiki or Cargo and then do it that way. So yeah, those are the kinds of things I've been thinking about. So as far as one wiki page versus many, I think it depends on the nature of the visualization. So for example, I just had a conversation about this yesterday. If you're putting together a wiki for a conference, should the entire schedule be semantic, and should there be a page for each talk with the different times for each, or should it all be on one page? There's strengths and weaknesses in each case. One weakness is if you want to change around a talk, you might have to edit 10 different pages slightly to get that working. So yeah, I think the more the different elements are dependent on one another, the more argument there is for having everything be in one big page as opposed to a lot of different pages. If they're really independent, then probably different pages are the way to go. And then if there's a standard file syntax that you can use, then it also is an argument for having one big page. So this is just my thoughts, just very briefly. Flowcharts, one page. Racy matrices, many. Gantt charts, one page. Kanban boards, many. And you can disagree. I could be wrong about one or all of these. So what's supported in MediaWiki already? There's an extension called Cognitive Process Designer, another one called Mermaid, which was already discussed, and then a result format for Gantt charts specifically in the semantic result formats extension. There might be others. Does Blue Spice have anything for BPM? No? Okay, cool. All right. So this might be it. Not cool as in that's good, but it just means this might be, I didn't miss anything big. The Cognitive Process Designer, it no longer works. It's in use, but with some modifications, people have used it. I don't think it's the right approach because it does store data across a lot of pages, and I think for flowcharts, there's just so much, everything's so connected, and there's so much information there that it's really awkward, I think, to store everything as just lots and lots of wiki pages together. But we'll do a demo, so we'll see what that's about. The Mermaid extension does exist and does work. It just provides a wrapper around the Mermaid.js library, which is actually a really cool library. And it stores all the data in one place. It's just a little Mermaid file. Did you have a comment or something? I have a comment. Oh, okay. Cool. Okay. And then, yeah, the Gantt result format I mentioned. So I'm working on an extension tentatively called Diagrams. It's not a great name. It's a little too generic. I'll probably change it. In theory, it's not a BPM extension because it just, in theory, supports any diagram. In practice, it might be because that's the kind of thing that makes sense to have to store in a wiki, those kinds of diagrams. So the approach is everything is stored in a wiki page, in one big wiki page for each thing. And then you can edit and display it using graphical tools. And then separately, it also lets Cargo or Semantic MediaWiki store that data in a queryable way. So this will make more sense once I show it. Let me go back here. So right now, there's two visualizations supported. BPMN, which is the flowchart, a very standard flowchart syntax, and Gantt charts. So it's only running right now on one. I'm glad this isn't a standard. Oh, it is French. No wonder. Oh no, it's okay. Well, almost got it right. Yeah, so it is. And there's no shift. Alt. There is a shift? Yeah. Found it. Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It's only right now on my Wiki Discourse DB, which is sort of a mostly serves as a test wiki for software. So if I go to BPMN, what did I call it? Test diagram. Okay. Oh, that was just my error. Oh no, that wasn't my error. That was because the M was different, was in a different place. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is just a random diagram. It's based off of something, and then I kept moving stuff around. This file this page just holds this content. It's a lot like Lua, like the Scribunto extension, where it just holds Lua code, and then it automatically displays the actual visualization of it right on the page. But if I go to the Edit tab, you can see it's just BPMN XML. This is apparently the standard syntax. It's like popular syntax for flowcharts. But then, if I click on the Edit Diagram tab, it uses the BPMN JS library. It actually also uses it to display it. But here you can edit it. You can move stuff around. And you can add whatever you want, and then save it. I can't save it because I'm not logged in, but that's the idea. And then you get all the benefits of having it on a wiki where you can see. This is some previous change I made. You can see all the changes that happen, and you can revert and so forth. So already there's the advantage of having version control on your flowcharts, which I don't think is possible in any other way. So that's BPMN using BPMN JS, and then the other namespace that's supported now is Gantt. Test. I think test diagram. Oh my God. Yeah, I think test diagram 2 was the more interesting one. Yeah. Okay. So I just put stuff together on the page. A Gantt chart using this other open source JavaScript library. This is read only, but then if I click on Edit Diagram, as you might expect, it lets me move stuff around and create new connections and whatever people want to do with Gantt charts. Is this? Yeah, stuff like that. Whatever I want to do. I rename tasks and and you can set the status, the progress status for each task. What just happened? Oh, okay. You can, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's like a standard thing in Gantt charts that you can set the progress and all that. Yeah. So then the only other feature of this that is, so you can also display all of these outside in other pages. You can just say, include this diagram. And then if you know about Cargo, it provides a hook. So either Semantic MediaWiki or Cargo can use this data and store it. In this case, I made use of the hooks. So there's this table for BPMN data where it just stores some of the stuff. So you can, that you can query and say and find, find all the tasks that connect to this task or that kind of thing. It's all stored in this table. And same with the Gantt data one. I don't know how useful all of this is, but but it, it takes care of, I guess, one of the major reasons to store everything in separate pages is because you can access all this data here. It parses through the Gantt or BPMN data and stores it in a queryable way. Does all of that make sense? Oh yeah, question about that.
Just click one of the links in the first one.
Here? Yeah. This one? Yeah, it'll just bring you to the page where that is stored. This happens to be the other test page I created with a Gantt chart. It's just a one task thing. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I apologize if you have no idea what all this cargo table stuff is. But the basic idea is that it's possible to use a hook to store the data, even though it's stored in this long syntax that's not part of Cargo or Semantic MediaWiki. What else makes sense for diagrams? I'm not sure. There are other syntaxes that would be useful to support. Mermaid is the obvious one. There's some others that, for various reasons, Draw.io I couldn't get working. Mermaid doesn't have a graphical editor. I think that would be really cool. I did a search, and a lot of other people have asked about that too. If anybody out there wants an open source project to work on with maybe a lot of glory involved, that's potentially a really interesting one to do, a JavaScript editor for Mermaid. But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe other people have ideas about what makes sense. And then Kanban and Racy, those actually might be best implemented via regular wiki pages, so this whole diagrams extension wouldn't make sense for them. These are just some thoughts. With Kanban boards, the best solution might be something called special multi-page edit, which you might not have heard about, but it's a feature in page forms that lets you edit a lot of pages together. So it looks like a Kanban board, and you move stuff around as you would in, Fabricate or whatever. With Racy matrices, that might be best implemented as just a result format. And you store all the responsibilities on people's individual pages. That's it. This is all. The extension hasn't been released yet, and I'm really a newcomer to BPM, so I'm very curious to hear if anybody has any thoughts about any of this, whether I've missed something obvious or whether there's really anything. Yeah. So I'll go ahead.
That's very cool, especially
Cool.
the Gantt chart. I've been wanting one
Oh,
of
really?
those that's really functional for a while. So that looks like the nicest, both visually as well as ability to drag things around that I've seen for using in a wiki. So that's awesome.
Oh, okay, cool.
I wanted to mention a few things. Another one that I know exists, at least that I've seen, Darren Welsh at NASA has developed semantic actions. And so it allows you to create actions that are on various pages and then represent them in essentially a Kanban board. It doesn't have the ability to drag and drop things from between columns as far as I know, but that's another one to look at. And it does store the information across different pages.
Yeah, okay. Are those actions wiki specific, like workflow within the wiki, or it can be anything?
It can be anything.
Oh, really?
It can be
Okay.
anything.
I'll look at that.
They created it for use in meetings to create action items in a meeting.
Yeah.
And then be able to visualize the actions
Yeah.
across different columns, workflow.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look at that.
So that was one thing. As far as, storing the information across, in a single page or across pages in the wiki, it's definitely an interesting, trade-off. What you were able to do with editing the diagram in place and dragging things around and placing nodes, it's helpful to be able to store that information, I guess, in one place. Although I guess you could edit pages across the wiki if you did that.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about with a flow chart. Well, I guess with
that
either
was with
case.
your BPM.
Yeah, I
flow
mean,
chart. Yeah.
right, yeah. I mean, that's what cognitive process designer tries to do, and there's even like an X and Y coordinate value for each page. I don't think they capture everything that, like, all the exact location of the arrows and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
For the mermaid diagram I showed earlier, the data is culled from a semantic query across pages in the wiki, so that
Sure.
each task is its own page. Pluses and minuses to that. I actually use, I generate the graph language for mermaid, the mermaid input in a Lua script by using semantic queries. And sort of build up that page, but it means that you have to know the format. It's not nearly as nice as being able to just plug it into an extension.
Yeah.
And put it in there. But it has the advantage that I'm able to cull the information by scraping Fabricator and building the information in different pages. Also, if you want to use the nodes in your graph for multiple purposes, either putting them in different graphs for different aspects, having them embedded in a single page doesn't really work.
Yeah, sure.
So that would be an advantage. And for whoever it is who's going to be doing work on Mermaid, while you're going and adding the editor for it, the line layout, I had seen that there was an improvement in a more recent version of Mermaid. I just downloaded the new Mermaid, and it's not better. The lines wind up crossing in bad ways, and so somebody needs to work on that too.
Okay. Well, if anyone from the Mermaid team is listening,
That would be awesome.
Or some ambitious 15-year-old or whatever is
just a few words. I'm not an expert on MediaWiki. I'll just give you my point of view as a 20 years experience on BPM.
Okay.
And I would say very interesting. Really a lot of potential, but it took me until the presentation of the tool to understand where you want it to come. Because you explain the context, I'll just give you a high-level view. BPMN is now the standard in the business to define, describe, and document business processes. BPMN stands from Business Process Modeling and Notation. That means it embarks the XML standard as an XMI for models and so on. It is the standard for exchange of data between two users describing or using their diagram. And the notation, as you show the boxes and so on, it is the notation which is part also of the norm, of the standard. Okay? So you should really focus on that. It is definitely used in any company working in business process description. What I see as really the added value is what is missing in all companies is that you have the graphic one side and the documentation on Word or whatever on the other side. So what would be really interesting is focused on the deep documentation of each task or each relation, each role, and so on, which is really the information that the user needs to have. And if I may make a link between, for instance, as an example, the user manual, which were shown by Dokit this morning, definitely user manual is a documentation of a task within a process. So for the user coming to his task, the best way, the more logical way, is to come from the high-level process. Where should I do that? And then you click and you enter in the detailed description of what you have to do at this step. Really going through the graphical vision to a very deep, detailed documentation of the task and the context of the task and so on. And then going to maybe the equipment you need to do this task, the material or tools you need, and then going down in the chain of documentation.
You're saying that's information that can't just be stored in one flowchart. It has
I mean, as soon as you go into the the process description, it's as we say a Russian doll system. You have the high level. For instance, we have described in the railway this last 6 months ago the high level process from design to operation of a new track. It's a A0 page, so it's one page. I agree, it's one page, but A0 page.
8.5 by 11, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
A0, you know, it's, I don't remember how many A4, but it's a huge page on the wall. And it's the eye level. And each box on this chart, you click on it, and you enter in a new page for A3 approximately, and you click and go down and down and down. But it's always link between tasks. So if you describe them at eye level, you will have the high-level description. You click on it, you go down next step and so on, and you have a consistent rule that everyone can contribute at his level, where is his responsibility, building all together a very consistent rule.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll look in that. I'll see if BPMN JS, which is the library I'm using and I'm constrained by, if it supports linking. I guess you're saying linking from one flowchart to another, which shows a low-level view of one node or something.
It's just a
and being
matter
able
of
to connect
aggregation
multiple
via
flowcharts.
aggregation. It's zooming.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But from my opinion, then what you save inside semantic MediaWiki is not exactly the BPMN format. Then you need to have a kind of semantic wiki version of this BPMN things, where you probably, in my opinion, you split into pages, and then you aggregate everything, and then you can extract a BPMN version of it and display it. And that's it. And you play with both sides of the same data.
Right. Well, that gets into the basic issue I was talking about, which is should you store everything in one page or in multiple pages? In my case, I still think it makes sense to have it in one page as a true BPMN XML thing, and then just store the business relevant part of that elsewhere, as opposed to storing everything, as opposed to storing the grid coordinates and all this stuff. Just store the fact that task A points to task B in this way with this kind of relationship, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to pick up on exactly that. If a wiki would be used in an organization to document tasks and processes or whatever, they would probably have separate pages for each task because there is a lot of documentation involved for this task. So this is why the current implementations, like the Gantt result format or whatever, they are just used to display the relations of different pages in a specified format. So this could be done with BPMN, but the editor got me interested because the editor now would mean that you're maybe changing one process from 1 month to the next. This would mean that you would have, if you click save on the chart, that you would have to update the one page that has the date stored on its page. Then it would be very useful because I don't believe in this one big XML file, and you would be happy with that. If you would use a wiki for your documentation purposes, you would have tasks and persons involved and whatever as separate pages in your wiki. And this could be displayed in BPMN notation. And if you change something in the editor, you would have to change several pages or several attributes on several pages, which would be great. I don't know if this can be done. But I think this one-page approach would be quite limiting. So maybe there is a solution for that, of really, if you click on save, then you know, okay, this task has been moved from 1 week to the next, or the date has been moved, and this date is going to be written in the page or in the property of this one page that is mentioned. So that would be the theoretical solution, I guess.
The remark, this discussion reminded me of one of the constituent elements of the semantic web is the AAA. Anyone can say anything about anything. And I think we just extended it into a quadruple A, because now it's anything, anyone could say anything about anything, anywhere. So it's interesting to tie it in across sources. Okay. Anyway, that was just a remark. So no more questions there? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.